The night was clear. The date was October 31, 1999, Halloween. At John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, ground crews prepared EGYPTAIR Flight 990 for its journey. This was a routine flight. It was a scheduled passenger service from Los Angeles to Cairo, with a stop in New York. The aircraft was a Boeing 767-300ER, a wide-body jet with a strong safety record. It was registered as SUGAP. On this leg of the journey, from New York to Cairo, the plane carried 217 people. This total included 14 crew members and 203 passengers. The manifest was a cross-section of humanity. There were American tourists returning from a trip to Egypt. There were Egyptian nationals heading home. Among them were 33 Egyptian military officers, a detail that would later fuel intense speculation. The flight was delayed. It was supposed to depart at 1:00 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Instead, it pushed back from the gate nearly an hour late. At 1:20 a.m., the Boeing 767 finally lifted its wheels from the runway. It climbed gracefully into the dark sky over the Atlantic. The flight plan was simple. It would fly east, across the ocean, toward the dawn. The crew in the cockpit was experienced. At approximately 1:48 a.m., something changed. The captain, Ahmed El-Habashi, left the cockpit. He was likely heading to the lavatory. This left Relief First Officer Gamil Al-Batouti alone at the controls. Then, at 1:49 and 45 seconds, the autopilot was disconnected. This action was deliberate. Immediately after the autopilot was disengaged, the aircraft's nose began to pitch down. The plane entered a steep, aggressive dive. The dive was not gentle. The recovery of the aircraft's black boxes was a critical priority. The U.S. Navy located the wreckage in 240 feet of water. Deep-sea salvage vessels were deployed. Crews retrieved the cockpit voice recorder. Crews retrieved the flight data recorder. The black boxes held the key. The flight data recorder gave a second-by-second account showing the plane's movements and the pilot's control inputs. The cockpit voice recorder captured cockpit sounds and conversation. Together, the devices reconstructed the final minutes. Autopilot was disconnected. A sustained nose-down elevator input followed. Investigators heard something chilling on the CVR. Just before autopilot disconnect, Relief First Officer Gamil Al-Batouti said a quiet phrase in Arabic.
Tawakkaltu ala Allah.
I rely on God. He repeated it as the dive began. The investigation into the crash of EGYPTAIR 990 quickly became a source of international friction. The United States, through the NTSB, led the investigation because the crash occurred in international waters, but originated from a United States airport. The NTSB's analysis of the black box data led them to a disturbing conclusion. They believed the evidence was consistent with a deliberate act by the Relief First Officer, Gamil Al-Batouti. The repeated phrase, "I rely on God," the sustained nose-down control inputs, and the fight against the captain strongly suggested a suicide by pilot scenario. The NTSB concluded that the crash was not the result of an accident. This conclusion was vehemently rejected by Egyptian authorities. The Egyptian Civil Aviation Authority, or ECDA, conducted its own parallel investigation. They offered a completely different interpretation of the events. The ECDA argued that the phrase "Tawakkaltu ala Allah" is a common Arabic expression used by people in moments of stress. Instead, the Egyptian investigators focused on the possibility of a mechanical failure. The final reports did not end the debate. They solidified it. The core question remains unanswered: why? The FBI, which conducted a background investigation, found no definitive answers. There were rumors. Some colleagues claimed Al-Batouti had been reprimanded for workplace misconduct. But none of these claims were ever substantiated to the point of providing a clear motive. He left no note, he gave no warning. The why is buried in the wreckage at the bottom of the ocean. The EGYPTAIR 990 crash left a lasting impact on aviation, and especially after the Germanwings Flight 9525 crash in 2015, which had similar circumstances, many airlines around the world implemented a rule of two. This procedure requires that two crew members must be in the cockpit at all times. The discrepancy between the American and Egyptian investigations also serves as a stark reminder of how culture and national pride can influence the interpretation of evidence. The saga of EGYPTAIR 990 demonstrates that even with black boxes, hard data, and rigorous analysis, the truth can sometimes remain a matter of perspective. But the silence that follows the final recording leaves us with the permanent, unsettling question of why it happened at all.